Welcome to Sons of Patriarchy. I'm your host, Peter Bell. Sons of Patriarchy exists to expose the hidden power structures behind Christian nationalism. Through survivor testimonies, shared storytelling, and honest expert critiques from across the political, theological, and cultural spectrums, we shine light on systems of abuse and authoritarian control principally focused on Doug Wilson of Moscow, Idaho, and the movements he has founded and influenced, as well as across Reformed and conservative churches. Our goal is not just to inform, how did we get here, and what do we do about it, but to spark meaningful conversations in homes, faith communities, and public spaces about what a healthier, freer, and more just society can look like. Together, we can dismantle harmful narratives and build communities of mutual respect and diversity. Sons of Patriarchy aims to do what Doug cannot. We will unite people. We do not demand you be like us. We meet you where you are. And while you may not always agree with us, we hope we can agree on this. Churches should be safe. You can find us on all podcasting platforms as well as YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and X, and sonsofpatriarchy.com. Ad-free episodes, bonus content, listening a week ahead of time on both audio and video, monthly Ask Us Anything specials, and many more perks are available across 5 membership levels at patreon.com/Sons of Patriarchy. Much of the same is available via Apple Podcast subscriptions for $4.99 a month. You can give to this work directly at donorbox.com/sons-of-patriarchy. Exclusive Sons of Patriarchy merch is available at sonsofpatriarchy.com/merch. If you'd like to get a hold of us, desire to interview either myself or co-producer Sarah Bader, or you're a news media agency looking for information on Christian nationalism, patriarchy, Doug Wilson, or anything else we covered in this series, go to sonsofpatriarchy.com/contact. Now, on to the episode. All right, well, welcome to Sons of Patriarchy. We have another Saturday bonus episode. This is coming out on the second Saturday in January because podcasting is funny like that, where you get lower listenership towards the holidays, and then everybody starts listening again during the new year because they want to hit their new year resolutions or whatever it may be. And we're in the religion and spirituality category, so that one starts jumping up for Bible plans at the beginning of the year. But we have 2 people on for this episode, and this will be a different episode than we usually do because it's both survivor based, but it's also more than that. There's some intersecting stuff in this too, which I'm really interested in to learn. I was connected to both of these ladies through Leah Denton, the psychotherapy podcast, which I was on her podcast in April sometime, April or March, and then Leah's like, "Hey, I'm going to connect you to this woman. You really need to hear her story. You need to see what they're doing, and they would love to go public and try to get some support for what they're doing." So we'll talk about that. So Amy and Jennifer, if you can introduce yourselves, kind of what you're doing, what you're all about, and then we'll get into Amy's story, then how both of you met and then are now doing what you're doing today.
Jennifer, you introduce what we're doing.
Okay. Well, Amy and I are co-producing a docuseries about therapy harm and all the issues surrounding it. So not just the abuse, but the aftermath and what survivors go through. We are both co-producing, co-writing, although it's a non-scripted, it's a docuseries. I'm the director, and Amy is the protagonist. So basically we know her story, and we follow her through the whole series from the beginning to the end.
Got it.
I was taken advantage of by a therapist who is also a psychiatrist and an elder at my church. In 2013, I got away in 2014. Originally I was going to tell no one. But eventually I needed help getting out. So I reached out to my pastor. First person I reached out to didn't believe me. Reached out to my pastor, got away. Eventually, I gained the courage to report to the medical board, and they allowed him to surrender his license. I filed a civil lawsuit. And then I just needed more. I needed to understand what happened. I couldn't forgive myself because I just didn't understand how I, as an intelligent adult, could be duped in such a way. So I wrote a book, and that came out in 2021. I've been
What's your book called?
advocating Preyed Upon, Breaking Free from Therapist Abuse. And it's
Mhm.
with a play. It's pray,
Yeah.
P-R-A-Y, with the A marked out and
Play
an
on
E.
words. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. I have been advocating for survivors of therapy harm ever since. In recent years, I started an online book club for survivors of therapist and clergy abuse. And we read books about therapist and clergy abuse and talk about it. And I put out as much social media as I can just to inform people. And I have a website. And that is how Jennifer found me.
Hmm.
I believe it was even on Preacher Boy's podcast
Hmm.
that she heard me talking about it. Jennifer, you can take it from there.
Okay.
Yeah.
I am
We know
also
Preacher Boys well. Yep.
yes.
Yeah.
I am also a survivor. And much like Amy started to say, I wasn't going to tell anybody either, and never did. I felt like what happened to me was so bizarre, and so horrific for my life, and so traumatic that I was going to take it to my grave. And it had been a number of years, but I was still suffering tremendously. And, I found Amy online. I wasn't looking for anything on therapy harm, but I did come across Preacher Boys episodes, several of shows that she did. And she captivated me completely because it was the way that she expressed herself and how she told her story. It was like looking in a mirror. Even though our abuse stories have things that aren't similar, like hers was a man, mine was a female, survivors all have very similar emotional experiences when they're harmed by a therapist. And so she just utterly captivated me. And it took me a few weeks to work up the courage to reach out to her because, she had this website that says, please reach out to me. And even though she was a survivor, I still was riddled with so much shame. I had so much fear about even speaking to a survivor because I just felt that I just felt like what I went through was somehow, when you experience it yourself, you think it's more shameful than anybody else. But I did reach out, and it was one of the best things I ever did. I mean, we just bonded immediately, and Amy's really was my advocate, and we come from very different backgrounds, but she has all the advocacy. She knows all the survivors. This is her platform, and she's an amazing advocate. She helps so many people, and I had the film background. So just between us, we decided that this subject really needs to be out there for the public to understand. And so between the two of us, it's just, we've made tremendous strides, although we still need to do a lot more, but it's quite a partnership, and and she's helped me along the way in my own journey. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. Not the abuse stuff, that is
Yes.
horrific, but yeah, we
Yes.
are well acquainted with when you start talking about this. You think or you in some sense you think there's more people out there,
Right.
but then you're also like, but surely like either their stuff is harder than mine, so why would I ever talk to them because
Right.
mine's nothing? Or you think, well, maybe I was actually in the wrong, and maybe I should
Yes.
talk to other people, because then if I do talk to other people, then I'll realize like, oh, maybe I did have something bad, and then you just like you don't want to
Yes.
go down either one of those routes,
No.
and so you just stop yourself before you even reach out to anybody else.
Yeah. It's yes. Even it's sad to say, but even when the other person is a survivor, if you've been through the type of abuse that Amy and I have been through on that level, you do have self-blame. And they blame you anyway. The therapists blame you. So, and in my case, I hadn't really had any validation. I mean, I had validation from my family, but I was just, I just thought I was just full of shame, but
Yeah.
that wasn't my experience. It was a great experience with Amy, and now I've
Yeah.
learned a lot. I've learned a lot from
That's
her.
good.
So
Yeah, so Amy, a few questions for you. Not specifically about the kind of abuse, although we can certainly get into it, and then we'll look around and talk about some of the stuff that you guys are working on and producing, what you're hoping to do. So our series, we focus on Doug Wilson, Reformed Presbyterian circles that love the quote unquote purity of the doctrine, and surely there can be no abuse because our doctrine is so high and lofty and incredible and pristine and focused. Our ministers are incredibly well educated. They care about the gospel and Jesus above all else, and so it's either impossible or doubted whether or not somebody's been abused in these circles, because how could you when your theological system is this precise? It's almost like the more precise your theology is, or your understanding of the church or who Jesus is, that it leaves no room for abuse, because how could you have it? And then Eric runs around the Preacher Boys as independent fundamentalist Baptist, which is a different beast all in itself, but still has some of the same inner workings. Psychotherapy, Lee Denton, I know she ran around Southern Baptist circles. And so when people think about abuse, it's not just one kind of church denomination or theological tradition or a kind of pastor's background. It's all of them. So I'm curious for your story, what was like the church background? What were these elders like? And maybe like what was the environment at this church, who this elder was and what he was part of? And that way it's people who listen to this think, okay, I'm not a Reformed church, I'm not a Southern Baptist church, or I'm not at a independent fundamentalist Baptist church. So is my story the same as one of yours? Could I even speak out if I didn't come from your circles or his circles or her circles? What were the waters like at your church that you were abused at?
Well, one thing that made me especially vulnerable was that I had become a Christian a year before.
Okay, so you were brand new.
I was a brand new believer. I started Celebrate Recovery in 2012. And that is where I started to, look at faith and look at my issues with God. And that is where I say I became a Christian.
Okay.
I
so
was
2012-ish is, you said you became a Christian or so?
I was 40 years old.
Okay.
Brand new to the Christian world, brand new to the language, to the Bible. I knew a little bit of the Bible, but it was almost all brand new to me. So
you didn't grow up in a church that grow up in a family that went to church, read the Bible, talked
we
about
grew
it.
up Catholic.
Okay, gotcha.
But we didn't. It's a completely different.
So you entered a whole new world.
It's a different universe. Trust me. It was very weird to me at first, very awkward to me at first, but I eventually fell in love with Jesus, and then that became more comfortable for me.
Yeah. So this is all in the background that you're a baby of the faith.
Yes. And of course I'm naive and I'm excited and I'm amazed that you can even interact with God in the present. I thought it was just like, good luck if you get to heaven, maybe you can ask a question.
Yeah.
And I'm not speaking to all Catholicism, just speaking to my own.
Specifically how you were taught.
That is how I felt. So this abuser was a psychiatrist who did therapy. He came highly recommended. My pastor's wife was my mentor in Celebrate Recovery, and she recommended him for counseling, as did some of my friends. And
was he a licensed psychiatrist or therapist?
He was a psychiatrist who did therapy.
Okay.
So it's kind of rare for a psychiatrist to do therapy, but it isn't like out of the realm.
Sure. Yep.
And I thought, well, that's cool. It's a small town. We had 2 psychiatrists in the entire town. I was new, fairly new to this town. And I thought, I need a psychiatrist to manage my meds, and I'd like to find a counselor. And the fact that he's Christian, that's just a bonus. He was a member of the prayer team. And then I eventually learned a church elder. My pastor trusted him, and I trusted my pastor. So I started seeing him. And I'm not going to lie, I knew pretty early on he was odd, but odd didn't necessarily equate to evil. It just
Yeah.
equated to quirky and goofy, and that was all part of his cover, I'm sure. He made sure to hug me every Sunday after church in front of everybody because I sat in the second row. And I know that was part of it as well, to condition people that he's just a huggy type.
Hmm.
He's a friendly type. He's a weird type. He was a grandfatherly figure. So I did not see this coming in a million years. Um, I and I can go into as much detail as you want, but I realize now he started grooming me on day one, and
It gets you used to physical touch, so it makes more physical touch
correct.
less odd.
And at my very first session, well, first of all, I didn't even make the appointment. He had a waiting list, and a friend of mine who was seeing him had an appointment she didn't need and said, "You can have my appointment." Drove me there, said she needs the appointment more than me, and I was in his office. So I felt embarrassed and indebted right from the start, right? I had friends that were like, "What the heck? I can't even get in." So I felt grateful that he took me like a stray. But at the first session, he looked at what I was wearing and then looked at his Afghans in his cupboard and picked one out that he thought kind of matched what I was wearing, and in a very silly way covered me up with it. Well, I know now that was to invade my space right away. Um, and did I think that was sinister? No. Was it awkward? Yes. But again, I thought it was just him trying to put me at ease, and he just being playful, trying to make it lighten the moment or something. And I mean, you have to understand, he was 20 years older than me and wore this cross necklace, and I don't know. Um,
Yeah.
I saw him from probably April to December before I felt like I saw a red flag. Um, and then it was from December till July before I was able to get away, because when I realized he might be hurting me, I was so attached I couldn't leave. And the only other person I felt like I could talk to was my pastor's wife, because she recommended him, she knew me. She'd been in therapy with a male before. She knew what it's like to be attached to your therapist. It's a very childlike attachment. It's very common. They tend to take on a parental role for us. And for therapy to work, we have to be open and trusting. I mean, you could be guarded, you just won't get much out of therapy, right? So I eventually do go to her, and she takes his side. And I was devastated, and I stayed longer. I believe her words were, "I trust him implicitly,"
Mhm.
which told me, don't, I'm not willing to go any farther with this. So you need to like change your story or just don't speak a word of it. Um, Eventually I have to bypass her, and I go to the pastor and I say, I need help getting out because I can't leave on my own. That's a very abridged version. Um, you know, I don't know what would be good to go into more depth on, but the spiritual piece really gave me the most trust.
Yeah.
The psychiatrist and being a medical doctor, that did as well, and then him being 20 years my senior. But it was the spiritual piece that I just couldn't believe, even when I thought I was seeing badness, or I don't want to say evil. I just couldn't fathom that it would be real, because I'd never seen that in the real world before. I'd never seen that level of evil in front of my eyes. So I just kept downplaying it and minimizing it and thinking I'm misunderstanding it and giving, all the things.
Yeah, and even with the implicit trust, that I think for most, maybe I'm speaking a little too generally, but I don't think it's far off. Um, there is an implicit trust we put in clergy specifically because they do quote unquote speak for God. And so whatever they say, whether that be on the seat of the pastor, at the lectern, or at the podium, whatever it may be, like that picture isn't just, oh, there's a man at a podium speaking to me. That it carries something because the office itself means something to us.
Right.
It's more than just a person there. Or if it's an elder, like your abuser, it's he's been vested with something by this church, so this church sees something in him. And if I'm not seeing this, yeah, there could be, either you're trying to doubt yourself because you're saying there are red flags, but there can't possibly be red flags because he wouldn't be in this position if there were actually red flags. I can admit
Correct.
it's confusing because you see them, but then you're like, but so many other people have said this is the guy we trust. Why
Yeah,
can't I
and that
trust him?
that he's amazing and sweet. And the thing is with the red flags is that they're spaced apart, and these predators know to wait till we adjust to one before they move on to the next one. So they're not strung together. I didn't even realize there was a pattern until I got out.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had to go back and piece it together. And I kept going farther and farther back to the beginning until I realized it started in the beginning. And there's pictures of Jesus on the wall. And he said the Holy Spirit was his boss and that he was loving me for Jesus.
Oh,
and
during the sessions.
Mhm. And it was all very spiritual. He basically said this was one of those early red flags, but then I decided it could be true that my depression was caused because I had evil spirits.
Of course.
So there was lots of prayer on that. And so I'm a new believer, right? And I've heard a lot about evil spirits growing up. So I'm thinking maybe there's some truth to that.
Yeah.
So I went to my pastor's wife and kind of ran it by her, like, is this kind of weird? She says, oh no, spiritual warfare prayer is very common. He and my husband, the pastor, do it all the time. So I thought, okay, well, I haven't been able to kick the depression. I was like willing to accept that that could be true of me. Because why couldn't I shake the anger or depression? Maybe it is because I have evil in me. So it was constant prayer, constant Jesus, constant the Holy Spirit for the entire time as he was grooming me methodically for sexual abuse.
Gotcha. So that was actually my next question. Like how intertwined was faith conversations around his quote unquote therapy with you? Like how was it? He was a Christian who happened to be a psychiatrist or psychiatrist who did therapy or counseling, or was it like this was everything he did was intertwined in his sessions with you, where it was faith plus or mixed with or whatever it may be.
It was
within
almost 100% faith-based.
Okay.
And since that was a world that I was new to and couldn't specifically comment on, I just had my pastor's wife to kind of run things by. I took most of it, as truth. I didn't have a lot to go on there. He bragged he never took his cross necklace off, except for a case at the end when he removed his clothing. He took it off then, but it was constant from day one. And that was the only avenue in my life I had never looked at. I had never looked at the spiritual component of my depression. And I thought, that's the missing piece. And this is all a God thing. And this is a blessing. And I'm so lucky I'm here. And I'm finally going to get the healing I need. Because here I have somebody that can bring the God piece, the psychiatry piece, the therapy piece, all together. It's perfect.
Mm-hmm. So fast forwarding a little tiny bit, but taking this all into consideration, what happened when you realized this is not just not good, this is bad, and what he's doing is criminal? What happened when that stuff started clicking for you? It was like, this is not how therapy should be working. What he's doing with me. What was that like for you?
Well, I bought in, hook, line, and sinker for the whole father figure charade.
Yep.
And I became very attached to that. Really did think he was loving me for Jesus in an appropriate fatherly way. I mean, nothing physical. I don't mean that. But he then had to undo the father-daughter bond that he had worked so hard to create and move it more into a romantic area, which I wanted nothing to do with. I mean, if you're asking me, he's disgusting. He's like a grandfather. And I found that very unsettling. And that's sort of where it started, is like, what is happening? But I kept kind of just like, let's see where this is going. This can't really be. And then he'd pull back and then he'd move forward. So that's kind of where it started, where I started to be very uncomfortable. I started to go to my pastor's wife. I think he loves me. She laughed. I said, no, I think he loves me. And then I decide he doesn't really. And I was back and forth, but it just kept progressing. He kept pushing me into more and more uncomfortable, dangerous waters. And I was starting to feel like there was nobody else in this universe except he and I, because pretty soon, like when I told my pastor's wife, eventually, he assaulted me physically. She blew me off, and I thought, well, nobody's going to believe me. And I can't leave. I don't know why I can't leave. I'm so attached. and I want to fix it so we can go back because I thought it was safe right up until this point, right? So that probably was a period of like May, June, July, and then it just kept getting worse and worse. And I started asking him to stop, just telling him how uncomfortable I am. This is making me feel physically sick. I don't even want to go to church because I see you and your wife there, and I felt like he was trying to lure me into an emotional affair that I did not want. But then he full on sexually assaults me in the middle of a prayer, in the middle of a session. And that's where I just, everything went black and I just started sobbing. And I said, I can't believe you would do this to me. I can't believe you would do this to me. I don't want to live. I don't want to live. I can't. But here's the sad part, Peter, is I was totally alone now in the experience. I had no friends I could talk to. My pastor's wife didn't want to hear it. I thought if I told my husband, I desperately wanted to tell my husband, and I almost did at that point, but I thought he would say, well, wait, why were you sitting next to him? Everything seemed to lead back to me, because predators, when they groom, they use things you say and do in the manipulation process. So you feel as if you are participating in your own abuse process. So I thought, I have to fix it. And he was the only source of support I had. So he was comforter and abuser now, all rolled into one. And so I went back and he faked a tear and apologized. And I immediately started apologizing to him. I thought if I hadn't been needy and I hadn't wanted him to be a father figure, that this wouldn't have happened. He came to my side of the office, but then I asked him to stay and sit next to me. So I thought that was my fault. And I thought, well, I asked him to sit next to me, so anything that happened after that was all your fault. So everything, they're very masterful at weaving this together to where you get very confused as to what you wanted and didn't want, but you're like, was that my suggestion? And for example, I told him one time I imagined having like a father-daughter dance with Jesus in my mind, like that I always wanted that at my wedding. And so I imagined that in my head. And then he proceeded to bring a radio and ask to dance with me. Well, I didn't want to, but I was horrified, but I thought it was therapeutic and I should want to. And that it was part of my healing that shouldn't be so scary for me. That, part of what is wrong with me is that I'm so uncomfortable with these things that shouldn't be a big deal. Does that even make sense? Mm-hmm. Like, why is that scary to you? I mean, I had the meanest inner critic. It was just like, so fast forward, I decided it was my fault. And I went back for, I don't know. It's so sad to me to even tell you that I went back. I still thought I could fix it. And it got more and more, he backed off for a while and then it got blatant. And then I was going in and crying and asking him if he will just talk to me. Can we please just leave clothes on and talk? Which is to me just pitiful. And I probably did that 2 or 3 times before I found the strength to not go back. But what helped me to leave is that I just needed to know 100%. Like, I knew he was hurting me, but I still thought it was not intentional. And I thought what he was doing to me came from a place of care and love and concern and not a place from evil. Because again, I couldn't fathom that was real. So on the last session, when I asked that very question, will you just talk to me? Can we just leave clothes on and talk? His answer was cruel and cold, and I saw the evil that I needed to see, and I was able to immediately go and get help and say, somebody has to help me, please not go back. So I'm sorry if that's a longer version than what you were asking for.
No, you describe however you want to describe it.
Really?
Yeah,
it makes me feel so much more comforted to hear you say that, because it feels so, like Jennifer said, so shameful and embarrassing, and I feel stupid. And I know, because I've heard the survivor stories too. It's the same but different.
Yep, we've heard. I don't know the exact. We probably had about 100 on this series so far. Yeah, and especially for those who come to the faith later in life and they're brand new. Yeah, it's both confusing, but you're just like, you come to it because you're excited, and you trust, and then one of the very first people you meet then does this to you. So So I've
And
never been through it, but we've talked to enough people who are like, it's just disorienting.
it is. And, I really did naively thought that God was blessing me with a father figure.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was thanking him for it profusely in my journals. Thank you,
I
God.
have to
Thank
imagine
you.
that's what you're looking for. Like that's what I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but my assumption is that's the picture in your head you have of this guy that you want of this guy. And so regardless of whatever he does, like you're trying to like fit it into this picture. Like
Yes.
maybe you're putting him in the best light possible so you can try to fit the thing that you looked for in him in the first place,
Yes.
even though he's giving you every reason not to believe it or to put in it. But that doesn't mean that like you still don't want that with everything that you have in you.
Right. And we are attached to who we thought they were or wanted them to be.
Yeah.
And so even when they're hurting us, we're still attached to who we wanted them to be.
You'll fit it some way into like, well,
yes. Into the narrative that you hope it is.
Yeah.
Or you thought it was. So.
Yeah.
Okay. Jennifer, you're up.
I was going to ask Jennifer. I mean, so one of the criticisms we hear the most during this series, and I'm sure you guys have heard the same thing, is well, you're just like, now that you're trying to, like, you've written a book and now that you're trying to get this documentary series out there, like all you're looking for is fame. All you're looking for is people to like see your name and give you money and donate and then like put you in front of more people. And then you're going to be a public speaker. You want to be known as this to get famous for this. When you could have just stopped this, or like could have just told your pastor, or could have just told the congregants and just lived your quiet life from here on out with this, like just forgive and forget. We hear this all the stinking time. So I'm not asking you this because I'm asking you this. I'm asking because I can imagine the critics like, why would you go this public about this if you weren't looking for fame? I know that's a weird question to be asked, but I'm trying to funnel what I think people might ask and get you guys to respond to that.
Shockingly enough, I'm not sure that maybe because we're not as far along as you, but that particular criticism, as far as I know, hasn't come up about wanting fame. I think the criticism that we get is, why are you trying to destroy therapy? There are people out there that really need it. And I say, I wish Amy and I had that much power. I mean, people are going to continue to go to therapy no matter whether our series goes and it's amazing or not. What we're interested in really is more, we're not trying to take down a profession, but we want to examine it. Obviously, there are good therapists out there. Amy herself can testify to that. I personally have not had a good therapist, but I'm mature enough to know that there are good people trying to do good things. But I do feel like and if there are people that are angry, if the profession itself is angry, because we're telling truths, we're telling true stories that happen to people. And I myself can say, to address your question specifically, is I was going to my grave with this story. I already was trying to do another career and be known for that. I wasn't trying to ever be known for this story, or for what happened to me. But I have told my story on podcasts, even though I felt as I was doing it horrified. And I even said to Amy, okay, Amy, you be the judge of this. You work with the producer of that show and you try and make me look, as good as possible.
I get it.
But it's just too important an issue. So I can strike out the thing about fame. Amy hates to be in the limelight, even though I forced her into it. Mm-hmm. I forced her into being the protagonist of this series, because I believe it's a great way to educate people by having a personal story, a heroine story, a hero's journey, so to speak, which I feel Amy represents beautifully. She did go through something terribly traumatic and turned it into something good and helping others. So she hates to be in the limelight. I was taking this to my grave. But we're driven by the issue itself and how important it is to bring it to the public, to educate them on what good therapy should be, what it should look like, and what the red flags are when it's bad, and to be more careful when they're not just to take anybody just because they have a degree, and think that, automatically that's the person for you, or that they're, you need to be educated. You need to know that you are vulnerable in these situations. And you also need to know that it can go very, very wrong, as it did in my situation and Amy's. And it can truly destroy your life. It can really, really destroy your life. And, the therapy exploitation link line gets 40 to 50,000 calls per year to their site. And those are just the people that come forward. And, suicides happen. And when you're betrayed or abused by a therapist, it is so devastating. So Amy and I are very driven to get the word out, and to really do a deep dive into this subject, and not take any shortcuts around it, to really go into all the different kinds of abuse and what happens after.
Yep.
So that's what drives us.
Yep.
Yeah. And
I like that.
I remember saying this a long time ago. Everybody wants to be known, but nobody wants to be known for this.
No.
I can tell you
Absolutely not.
that I don't want to be the therapist abuse girl.
No.
Right.
It is so terrifying to me to put my story out there in a bigger way.
Somebody's got to do it. That's
what drives us is because it drove us almost to suicide, and we have spoken to hundreds upon hundreds of survivors. That is why we are doing it. And because it's not okay, there's not enough justice, and it's not safe. And it's a rampant problem that nobody wants to look at. But do we want to be famous for this? No, absolutely not. And, it's funny when you ask that question, it gets me fired up, because that's what a lot of people want to say. Like, oh, this is real fun, for us. And telling my story and subjecting myself to the ridicule that I have received, like especially on social media where people just say whatever they want, is not something that I enjoy. And it is not my personality at all. It is a ministry, because I'm trying to throw a lifeline to survivors, period. And I have to take all the hate that comes with that, and judgment. And I know I'll be judged. People will watch the series if we're so lucky to have one. And I know there will be the haters and the judgers.
Yeah.
And so, to suggest that any survivor would ever desire to be famous is just, it's laughable to me, because it's one of the hardest things I've ever done. And I remember when this first happened, and I was considering filing a civil suit, because I didn't think it was fair that this abuser who did so much damage just got to pretend to retire and move away. Yeah, he couldn't practice medicine anymore, but he was retirement age already. And the pastor's wife said to me, "Oh, you're not allowed, Christians aren't allowed to sue other Christians."
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And I said, wearing a cross does not make one a Christian.
Yeah.
And so just the church, that's something that the church really likes to talk about, is the whole forgiveness piece.
I think that Christians shouldn't be frivolously suing other Christians for whatever it is, but if another Christian, quote unquote, is breaking the law or hurting somebody else, then absolutely, I'm a Christian. Our God is a God of justice, and so He wants justice to be done. Doesn't care if it's Christian or non-Christian. He's like, I'm a justice God. I want this. I want you to figure this out. So trust me, I've heard the same things. Like, why are Christians going after other Christians? This is not a Christian thing to do. It's like, well, I'm pretty sure a Christian thing to do is to make sure that person gets his or her due for whatever it is that they've done. So also along these lines, again, this is a random question that I'll get more into the stuff that you guys are doing. I'm just trying to form the idea around this. I'm thinking of Christians specifically, because this is an elder of a church who's a Christian, who's a psychiatrist, who's doing therapy and counseling. for Christians who look at therapy in general and are like, well, that's the devil's work. Like, why would you ever go to therapy in the first place? So, of course, again, I'm speaking as them. Of course, you'd be abused because the therapy is not God's way of doing things with scriptures. It's just got to be scripture and scripture. And if you do talk to somebody, it should be the pastor. You just get a few pieces of scripture and you pray about it, and that's it. But if you go to a therapist, you're opening yourself up for this stuff. And I can see Christians look at like, why should we even care about a series on therapy if we think the whole enterprise itself is the devil's work?
It's a good question. And, I would think that Christians would not be able to turn away from a survivor who went to a Christian therapist. Like, where's the argument there? But if it's therapy in general, I mean, what I read in the Bible is that we're supposed to bear each other's burdens. And so maybe a Christian, maybe what your question is saying is, yeah, only with the pastor. But I know of so many abused by pastors. So, I mean, the argument again is, to me, falls flat, because what clergy can we trust? Jennifer, what do you think? I mean,
so
I know there's
I thought the
people out there
Christian,
like that.
I thought, being a Christian meant you have a certain set of values and you care for others and you care what happens to others. We're all brothers and sisters and that whole idea. And so to me, it's not Christian like to turn your back on anybody who's been harmed. I'm not, my viewpoint is, I don't have necessarily the Christian element in my story, and I wasn't raised with any of that, but just on what Christianity is supposed to stand for. For them to say something like you just had mentioned previously does not sound Christian-like to me. So that's what I have to say about it. I mean, we're supposed to care about,
Don't worry, it doesn't sound Christian to me either. So you're good.
So that's at the most basic level. That's what I think.
Yep.
I do know that argument, though. I was adopted, and my biological parents are Jehovah's Witnesses, and they are very much, you either go to a Jehovah's Witness therapist, or you stick with the Bible. That's it.
That's why I'm seeing
you're not allowed to go to college, or that's evil. So how are you going to find a therapist? That leaves you with the Bible.
That's why I see a good portion of Christians writing this off as like, why do I even care about a documentary that's talking about a thing that I don't even care about in the first place, or think is already riddled with terribleness, whatever, if they're Christian or not.
Well, how about this? I have an idea. What if somebody is abused by their pastor and they have terrible now trust issues about that, and they need to sort it out with somebody?
Yeah,
they're going to go to a therapist.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
When church is no longer safe, would you like somewhere to be able to go?
Yeah.
Maybe it's been safe for you your whole life, but that doesn't mean.
Yeah.
And I know that they know somebody where I don't know. I just can't believe that a listener would have not seen abuse or harm in the church over their lifetime. Do you? Mm-hmm. Or do they put it in a category of that was just one bad egg, one sinner or something?
Ask that question again. Sorry.
Well, the listener that would be critical of like, why would you go to therapy? You should get what you need from church and the Bible. Yep. I guess I can see the Bible argument a little bit, but I can't imagine anybody being a Christian for very long that they haven't seen abuse or hypocrisy.
I think those who would say that, or say something close to what I said, answering your question, would, in much the same way that you reframed or re-narrativized or try to fit in a narrative when you were being abused by your counselor or psychiatrist who was counseling, it's easy when you have, I guess in some sense, a very rigid worldview where things must fit in this box, and if they don't, either it doesn't make any sense, it's of the devil, or I can't think about. So like it has to fit in this. So most of them, if they hear about this stuff, maybe the really egregious stuff, they'll agree like, yeah, I can see how that's abusive, but why can't you as a Christian just move on, forgive it, forget about it, just leave it up to God? I don't want to speak too much on their hearts, but there can be something like, if this happened to you, I don't think you'd think that same thing. Or if you were hurt this bad, you wouldn't be thinking the same thing. Um, it to me, it sounds like, I don't know if this sounds strange, but it's like, if you lived kind of an easy middle class life, it's pretty easy to store this away as saying, like, well, that's not my experience, so that couldn't be anybody else's experience if that wasn't my experience.
Correct.
That's the stuff. I imagine people who say, well, if those who would doubt it, I think, don't see abuse in general, or if they do, it's they either must, they have to, or they have no other option other than to say, well, sure, it was bad, but like, you just, like, don't ever talk about it again. Just pray about it, forget about it, forgive the person, move on. You're harboring bitterness in your life. That's much worse than whatever just happened to you, because now you're letting that live with you for the rest of your life. That's the stuff that I can imagine them saying to your question.
Yeah.
But so now, to focus more on what you guys are building. So Jennifer, can you tell or describe to the audience, like, what is this project? How does it maybe like fit it? Like, maybe actually before that, is there anything like what you guys are trying to produce already out there, or that has been produced, talked about, discussed? Like, how does this fit into the documentary landscape? Has this been done before? Is this sort of charting new territory?
Well, there are a lot of docuseries on abuse, there's been a lot on clergy abuse, actually. Yep. There's been, as far as I know, there has been, stories, smattering stories of, women who have been sexually, abused by doctors and therapists. There have been those stories, like Lifetime movies. But there has never been, as far as I know, something that we're trying to do, which is, yes, we will address sexual abuse. It's obviously the one kind of abuse that everybody knows about, I think, yep. If you're living on this planet. And it's terrible, it's egregious, it's clearly illegal, but that's not yep. the only kind of abuse that happens in therapy. And there's many different kinds of abuse. There's lots of emotional abuse. There is not just men perpetrating abuse on women. Women are abusers, and they abuse men. Women abuse women. I'm sure there's men that abuse men. We've already come across many different kinds of egregious stories that are every bit as bad as sexual abuse that nobody even knows exists. They don't even know that you can be traumatically, emotionally abused by a therapist and end up killing yourself and be so traumatized. People don't know that. So we're doing a deep dive into all different kinds of abuse. I don't think that people know that men are also abused. So we have male survivors telling their stories. They were abused by women. I don't think people know what happens to somebody after they're abused, that a therapist can actually use their power to diagnose or commit a person to a mental institution as a way to retaliate against them, with the possibility they might say something, with the fear of it. I mean, in my case, I never threatened I was going to report or say anything, but my therapist had me handcuffed and taken to a police station. And those are the kinds of things people don't know. And therapists do have that power. I don't think people know how much collusion there is in the field, but it's much like a lot of other things, probably within clergy abuse as well. They stick by their own. They don't want to turn anybody in. And that's true in this case as well. I think people don't understand that when you've been harmed in this way and you need help, where do you go? You just can't. It's not so easy to go to another therapist if that's the platform, or if you were abused in that way, in that setting. And therapists are not they're not trained to deal with people who are abused in their own profession. So I think there's just so many issues that people haven't seen before, don't know about, don't know it can even happen. And so I feel like this is something we're doing that's something very important, and there hasn't been a deep dive. There's been stories, here and there, but nothing like what we're trying to do. We don't want to leave any stone unturned around this issue. So.
Yep. And then Amy, you as the protagonist, what's you coming into this and sort of being thrust into it? Can you talk about that? What are you hoping not to add, but from your story to as being part of this documentary? 'Cause you said it's non-scripted, so it's reality documentary of a sort. But what are you hoping to add to this with your voice itself, with your experience?
Kind of two things. I want mostly for adult survivors to understand they're not alone and that what happened to them was not their fault. And number two, that the general listener would just pause and, allow themselves to entertain the possibility that adults can be manipulated and groomed and abused, because it happens all the time in all different industries and all different scenarios, male, female. It's more pleasant for us to imagine that it only happens to certain types of people, whatever you want to call us, crazy, unstable, mentally ill, whatever you want to label us. The reality is it can happen to anybody, and that these predators are very skilled. So, those are the two things, because there's so much judgment, and adults do not feel they can come forward because adults believe, once you hit 18, you're not a kid anymore. And we have one survivor who was 18 when they were abused, right? And so it's like saying, well, she deserved protection until she was 17, but now she's an adult. Well, it's the same thing if you want to carry that forward. Well, 29, you should be protected, but now you're 30. So, and so we look at children, we look at elderly, but we forget the entire population of people that are at risk all of the time. You can encounter a predator anywhere. I also would love for therapists to pay attention to, maybe unintentional things they're doing that they don't realize could be harmful. This isn't an attack on therapists. I have a great therapist right now who's helping me. I think there's ethical therapists and abusive therapists and incompetent therapists and a whole range.
The same as clergy. Yep.
Yeah, it doesn't really help us if we are just presenting, number one, crazy stories that people believe, oh, like that happened to 3 people.
Right.
We want the public to understand this is happening at an alarming rate to all types of people, genders, ages, ethnicities, and we want therapists to understand that how to help a survivor when we reach back out for help again, if we gain enough trust. And, of course, there's going to be the predators that aren't going to change, but there could be therapists that could learn ways they can make therapy safer. So those are kind of things that I'm hoping for.
Awesome. Yeah. I didn't ask this question, and I don't know, even if I know, is this a therapy series that's faith-based? Is it not faith-based, or is it like kind of some mixed between?
It's just a mix. Some people may have a spiritual component, some people won't. But I really wanted to say this because back to that question earlier about what certain religious people might say about therapy. So many of the survivors that I have spoken to reached out for counseling or mentoring from their pastor.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I just have to say that.
Trust me, we're well aware.
I know.
Yeah. It's something, and coming from I was trained towards the pastoral ministry. So I have a master's degree in divinity, which is the professional quote unquote degree for clergy.
So
our program had a better program for counseling, and that meant one class that was 12 total hours, 1 credit hour, which equaled 12 total hours. That was the extent of our quote unquote counseling training, which from what I know of the landscape of clergy training, if your pastor has a graduate degree, which is cannot be normal in a lot of churches, especially non-denominational churches that aren't affiliated with a school or denominational system, which tends to require higher level schooling. They're simply untrained in counseling or
Right.
let alone psychiatry or psychology, anything, which tends to lead to we just need the Bible, and counseling therapy is, if more than sub-biblical, it's demonic and we can't do anything of it. But if they do it, they don't know what they're doing because they're not trained in it. So it's like having a doctor go into the operating room who spent 10 hours maybe watching some YouTube videos on surgery, and then going into the operating room, performing surgery, and then messing up and being shocked that he messed up. Not too dissimilar from clergy who decide one day, I'm going to counsel this person. It's like, you don't know what you're doing. You've never been trained in this stuff. But there's that prevailing thing especially amongst clergy. It's like, well, I have God's word, so of course I can counsel. And that's been like built up throughout the years because they're so anti-counseling that we can't take anything of it. So we have to just use what we think we know, which perpetuate some of these cycles, which is why I was asking about the spiritual or not spiritual or some mixture between.
Yeah. There's a whole nother area, and there's so much to cover with therapy abuse. I don't know how much we'll be able to cover, but there's the whole graduate training itself. They have either no ethics courses or they have one. And what therapists seem to tell us over and over is that all they were taught was you don't ever have sex with a client. Well, there is a million other ways.
Why do you have to be taught don't have sex? I feel like that shouldn't need to be.
I know. I'm like, is there anything else? I'm like, no, that was pretty much the main theme.
It's like, don't kill somebody. It's like, thanks for the amazing education.
Yeah. So that would be a whole nother area. And then, counseling, like individual therapist or clinics, there needs to be more, clients coming to therapy need to be given the licensure board information that they can reach out to if they have a concern. Just like when you take a medication, you get to know the side effects. And I feel like they deserve to know what red flags could look like, because I didn't even know it was a thing. I thought I was the only one on the planet. So there's so much good that can come from it, I feel like.
Yeah, I was not aware of many of the red flags. I don't think many people know of the red flags. All right. So before the recording, we talked about some of the things that you guys are in need of and some help that you're looking for and some asks. So Jennifer and Amy too, what, I don't know better, like what are your asks of those who are listening? Like, hey, this is where we're at. This is what we need. We're just going to be totally upfront. This is kind of the process that we're in. So where are you guys at? What help do you guys need? Who do you guys need to talk to? What do you need more of? So present like, hey, this is where we're at and this is what we need.
Okay. Me, Amy, or... Okay, hey, this is what we need.
we're pretty upfront. We're like, if we need something, we'll just ask for it. But so it's, what's the state of this, and like, where are you guys at, and what help do you need, and what's that look like for here going out?
Well, honestly, we're trying to broaden our visibility to gain the ability to have more people come forward with their abuse. We're trying to not just do a documentary, but we're trying to create a movement, and hashtag therapy to movement. And so we always need people to come forward with their stories. And mostly what we need is money, because at this point we don't have an official streaming platform that is going to fund, our entire series. And so we do have a fundraising platform where people can donate, which we really, really need. If I'm just being really honest, we really need it. We may be facing, as I mentioned earlier, the need to do a pilot episode, which we would have to spend for ourselves. And so, yes, we just need more visibility. We need money, and we need, people to come forward with their support and to give their stories. So we're continuing to build the movement and talk to people who this has happened to. And it's also a chance for them to be a part of an amazing group of people who really do understand the pain and the trauma that they've been through. I mean, for me, my story is not featured in this documentary. I'm directing it. Mm-hmm. But even though it's not, and I'm not telling my story, just being there, a witness to Amy telling her story again, or these other amazing survivors telling their story, it heals me. So I would hope for other survivors that they can have a piece of it as well, and join the movement.
I will say, I don't know what your listener base demographics are, but sadly, we're only able to focus on the U.S.
Okay. Yeah,
because laws and regulations are so different.
I think so. I had to send this somebody before. I think we're 85% U.S. and then 15% all across the board.
I hate when people reach out and I have to tell them that.
Yes.
And it isn't our choice. It's just what we need to do for this particular documentary. We're also looking for, experts, be it therapists, researchers, neuroscientists we have that can speak to all aspects of grooming and trauma bonding and therapy.
We have a lot of those listeners, so they'll probably reach out to you. Yep.
Okay. Directors of, that can speak to ethics and graduate programs, things like that.
Also, I think therapists who have reported other professionals is also, I think, a group that we would really love to. We have one. Do we have more than one, Amy? I know for sure we have one.
We have a couple, but we're always looking for an insider view on the industry as well.
Yeah.
Meaning a therapist who's been abused by a therapist or who has reported a colleague. How did that go? Was there retaliation? What did that look like?
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Okay. All right. Well, anything else? I want to leave final words with you guys. Anything that you want people to come away with this episode with, or thinking about what's the possibility for this docuseries, what you guys are building, for Amy, for your stories, anything at all that you want to leave listeners with. So Jennifer, if you want to start, and then Amy to finish it off.
Well, again, I really want people to know that this is something that can happen to them. And you don't have to come from an abusive background to have this happen to you. And I want people to come away with that it's really bad. If it happens to you, it's really bad. And so I just, that's what I want to get across to the public. And also I want to educate them, on what to look for and what good therapy looks like, at the same time, what bad therapy looks like. And I think one of my top hopes is that therapists who watch this documentary will be enlightened by the role that they play in their clients' lives, and to really learn the power that they have, and that when they make even small mistakes, to not just write it off, or just think, oh, I'm just human, I'm not perfect, that they really need to understand the role that they have. And I hope that's probably my number one thing. I hope that it really enlightens therapists to their role, and to take it a lot more seriously, and with a lot more humanity.
Great. Yeah. Amy, finish it off.
I think I just really want survivors to understand, especially adult survivors, being that they were taken advantage of as an adult, that they're not alone and that it wasn't their fault. I needed to hear that over and over and over in my healing. And I want the general public who hasn't experienced this to understand that adults are taken advantage of all the time, and that the devastation it causes is immense. Just because you're a certain age, it doesn't minimize the pain and the trauma and the betrayal that this causes.
Right. Well, thank you both very much for coming on.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.